Eli had lived most of his life on the edge of the desert, where the land stretched so far that a lonely man could ride for days without hearing another voice. His ranch stood like a tired skeleton on the dry plain, half-broken fence posts, a sagging roof, and a windmill that squeaked every time the wind pushed against it. People in town often joked that Eli owned more dust than cattle, and even though he heard every word, he never argued. He was a quiet man who believed a person's worth wasn't measured by what he owned, but by how he chose to act. Even in tough times, he held on to that belief like a rope in a storm. One long afternoon, Eli rode back from town with nothing in his saddlebags except a bit of flour and coffee. He was counting the coins in his pocket, wondering if they would last the week, when he heard something strange echoing between the rocks ahead. It wasn't the sound of animals or wind. It was sharp and filled with fear. He stopped his horse and listened more carefully. There it was, again, voices, shouting, and the kind of struggle that made a man's heart tighten. Eli pushed his horse forward, following the noise into a narrow canyon where the stream cut through the rocks. As he came closer, he saw a sight that made him freeze for a moment. 3 Apache women, tall, strong, and dressed in ceremonial clothing, were surrounded by a group of dangerous men. The women stood shoulder to shoulder, trying to defend themselves, but their path was blocked, and the attackers looked ready to overpower them. Eli had no rifle, only a rope, a small knife, and his horse. He could have turned around and ridden away. Nobody would have blamed him. But the idea of leaving anyone in danger, especially people who were clearly outnumbered, made something inside him rise. He couldn't watch and do nothing. He kicked his horse forward with more force than usual, shouting to draw attention. His sudden arrival startled the attackers. One man turned, confused, and before he could react, Eli threw his rope with practiced accuracy. The loop caught the man's arm and yanked him off balance. Eli didn't wait. He rode straight past them, pulling the man toward the ground as his horse charged through. The other attackers panicked. One slipped on the wet stones near the stream. Another stumbled into the water as Eli swung around again, using the horse's speed to send more splashes and confusion their way. Everything happened fast, shouting, water flying, hooves hitting the ground, and then, as if realizing the fight wasn't worth the trouble, the attackers ran off deeper into the canyon, disappearing behind the rocks. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of the stream. Eli slowed his horse and looked toward the 3 women. They stood still, breathing hard, their ceremonial clothes slightly torn from the struggle. Up close, they were even taller and stronger looking than he expected. Each had braided hair decorated with beads, and their expressions carried a mix of shock and relief. The calmest one stepped forward first. Her dark eyes studied Eli with curiosity. "You helped us," she said in clear English. "Why?" Eli cleared his throat, suddenly aware of how small and dusty he must look next to them. "You were in trouble," he answered. "A man can't just ride past that." The women looked at each other, as if surprised by his simple explanation. Then, all 3 introduced themselves. The calm one was Tala. The tallest, with a fierce look in her eyes, was Naira, and the soft-spoken one who kept her hands close to her chest was Asha. They explained that they were brides traveling to a sacred gathering with their tribe when they were separated from the main group. They had taken a narrow path to reach the village faster. Not knowing danger waited ahead, Eli felt bad for them. "You shouldn't walk back alone," he said. "I'll ride with you. Make sure no one else bothers you." The women agreed, though they seemed surprised that a stranger would stay with them after such a risky rescue. They walked beside Eli's horse as he led the way out of the canyon. During the journey, the 3 brides asked him many questions. They wanted to know where he lived, why he traveled alone, and what made him jump into danger without thinking. Eli answered honestly. He told them about his ranch, how it was nearly falling apart, how he barely had any cattle left, and how life had been harder in recent years. He said it without shame. He had always believed that a man should be honest, even when the truth wasn't impressive. The brides listened closely. Their expressions softened as he spoke. Asha said, "A man who has little but still risks himself for strangers is not poor. His heart is full." The other two nodded, and Eli felt a warmth in his chest at the unexpected kindness of her words. By the time they reached the Apache village, the sun was setting. The people gathered quickly when they saw the three brides returning with a stranger. Elders stepped forward first, then younger villagers, all speaking rapidly in their language. The brides explained what had happened, pointing at Eli whenever they described how he saved them. Eli stood quietly as the chief of the village arrived. The chief was an older man with deep lines across his face and eyes that saw everything. He studied Eli from head to toe, saying nothing at first. Then he placed a hand on Eli's shoulder and nodded once, a sign of respect that made the entire village fall silent. "You will stay tonight," the chief said in a tone that allowed no argument. "It is our way. You saved our daughters." Eli felt strange being called a hero, but he accepted the chief's invitation. He was given a place to rest, near the fire, and the brides were taken to their shelter to recover from the long, dangerous day. The villagers brought food to Eli, fresh bread, roasted meat, warm herbs, and treated him like an honored guest. But what confused him most was how everyone kept looking at him. Their expressions held something heavy, almost like expectation. Women whispered to each other. Men nodded with approval when they passed him. Even the children watched him with wide eyes, as if he had done something far greater than he believed. That night, as Eli lay on a blanket near the fire, he stared at the stars and wondered what he had stepped into. He had acted without thinking, simply doing what felt right. But the way the tribe reacted made him feel as though saving those three brides carried a meaning far beyond what he understood. He had no idea that when the sun rose the next morning, the entire tribe would be waiting for him. He didn't know that the chief had already spoken with the elders, and that the brides had already given their thoughts. He didn't know his life was already changing. All Eli knew was that he had helped three women in danger, and that somehow, that simple choice was about to lead him into the most unexpected moment of his life. Eli woke up before the sun rose, thinking he should quietly thank the chief and leave before he caused any trouble. But as he stepped outside the small shelter they gave him, he froze in place. The entire Apache village was awake. Men, women, and even children stood in a wide circle, their faces serious. Drums beat softly from somewhere behind the group, steady and slow, like a heartbeat moving through the morning air. At the center of the circle stood the chief. Beside him were the three brides, Tala, Naira, and Asha, each wearing fresh clothing decorated with beads and paint, looking more formal than they did the day before. Their expressions were calm but focused, as if they already knew something Eli didn't. Eli touched his hat nervously and took a step forward. He felt like he was walking into something important, even though no one had explained anything yet. The air felt heavy, not with danger, but with expectation. The chief raised his hand for silence. The drums stopped. The village became still enough that Eli could hear the wind moving across the dry plain. "Rancher Eli," the chief said, his voice deep and steady. "You saved three of our brides. You risked your life, though they were strangers to you. Our people honor such actions." Eli shook his head quickly. "I didn't do it for honor. They needed help. Anyone would have done the same." The chief gave a slow, knowing look. "Not anyone. Many men avoid danger. You stepped into it without fear." Eli felt heat rise to his face. Compliments always made him uncomfortable, but this moment felt bigger than simple praise. The chief continued. "Our tribe has ancient laws. When a man saves the life of an Apache bride, he earns gratitude that must be repaid. The law is older than my father and his father before him." Eli swallowed. "Sir, I don't want anything. Truly." The chief raised his hand again, firm, calm, gentle. You cannot refuse the law. It is not about reward. It is about balance, respect, and truth. The villagers nodded. The three brides watched Eli with steady eyes. He felt everyone's gaze settle on him, like the warmth of the sun rising behind the hills. The chief spoke again. The law states, when a man saves a bride, the tribe must offer him a blessing. When he saves more than one, he must choose one woman to stand by him, and the tribe will honor that choice. Eli blinked hard, thinking he misunderstood. Choose one? One of these three? The chief nodded once with certainty. Yes. One of the brides you saved will go with you. Not forced, not pressured. It is her choice as much as yours. But the custom must be respected. Eli felt his heart thump loudly. He looked at the three women. Tala stood with calm strength, her dark eyes thoughtful. Naira stood tall and proud, looking him straight in the eye with boldness. Asha looked gentle but attentive, her hands clasped in front of her. Eli lifted his hands helplessly. Chief, I'm just a poor rancher. My home barely stands. I don't have enough cattle to fill a pen. I'm not someone who deserves. Tala stepped forward gently. You saved our lives. Worth is not measured by cattle. Naira added. You fought without thinking of yourself. That shows the strength of your spirit. Asha said softly, a man who protects others is never poor. Their words stunned him. He didn't know what to say. He'd spent so many years feeling like he had nothing to offer anyone. Hearing these strong, respected women speak of him like that shook something deep inside him. The chief allowed them to speak more. One by one, each bride stepped forward. Tala spoke first, her voice calm. I saw the way you looked at danger. Your eyes did not show fear. You have the heart of a protector. A quiet heart, but strong. I respect that in a man. Naira stepped next, her presence fierce and confident. You charged into a fight with only a rope and courage. Men like that do not appear often. You are not weak. You are not small. You are a man who acts when others freeze. Asha came forward last. Her voice was gentle, but carried true feeling. I watched you help without expecting thanks. I watched your kindness. You treated us with respect. You are someone who brings peace, even in danger. That is a gift. Eli felt overwhelmed. He didn't expect to hear such honest words from anyone, let alone three brides who barely knew him. The chief stepped forward again. Now you must decide. Do not choose with pride or fear. Choose with truth. Eli looked at the three women, and for a long moment, he said nothing. He thought about the journey back through the canyon, their conversations, and the way each woman had looked at him not with judgment, but with understanding. He thought about how Tala's calm presence steadied the stressful moment. He remembered Naira standing strong, even when danger surrounded them. And he remembered Asha's quiet voice, telling him he wasn't poor in heart. Each woman had her own strength. Each had shown him respect in different ways. This decision wasn't easy. He didn't want to hurt anyone. But he also knew he had to choose honestly. A choice made from fear would hurt them more. Finally, Eli stepped toward the woman whose presence felt closest to his spirit. He reached out his hand slowly, respectfully. When she placed her hand in his, a gentle murmur spread through the village, not surprise, not disagreement, but acceptance. The chief nodded. The two brides who were not chosen smiled softly. They were not upset. Their culture taught them that choices of the heart must be true, not forced. The tribe prepared a small ceremony, not a grand one, but something peaceful and respectful. Women placed a shawl around Eli's shoulders. The chosen bride stood beside him, tall and strong, her hand touching his arm lightly. It was a soft moment, but it held the weight of new beginnings. Eli stayed in the village for several days afterward. His chosen bride walked with him, talked with him, learned about his simple ranch life. She asked questions about the land, the animals, and the work he faced each day. She didn't seem bothered by the poverty he described. She only seemed interested in knowing him. Before Eli left with her, the chief gave him one final gesture of gratitude. He sent several men to help repair the ranch, fix the roof, mend the fences, and restore the broken gate. A man who saves lives should not return to an empty home, the chief said. Eli felt something warm rise in his chest. He had lived alone for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to have people stand beside him, not because they owed him, but because they respected him. When Eli finally rode home with his chosen bride, the land didn't seem as empty as it once did. The fences were straight. The roof no longer sagged, and beside him rode a woman who had chosen to walk into his life willingly, not because of duty, but because she believed in his heart. Eli looked at the horizon as they approached his ranch. For the first time in years, it didn't feel lonely. It felt like the beginning of a new story, one that started in a canyon stream with a brave choice, and led him to a partner who stood tall beside him, ready to build a life of honesty and strength together. And every time he remembered the chief's words, he knew they were true. A man's worth was never measured in cattle or coins. It was measured in courage, kindness, and the strength to help others, even when life was hard. That was the day Eli understood he was not poor after all. He had gained something far greater than land or wealth. He had gained a future.